This week on the WriterCon podcast.
My one piece of advice would be to write. Write every day. Just write.
Welcome to WriterCon, a gathering place for writers to share their knowledge about writing and the writing world. Your hosts are William Bernhardt, best-selling novelist and author of the Red Sneaker books on writing, and Lara Bernhardt, award-winning author of the Wantland Files book series.
Thank you, Jesse Ulrich. And hey there, writers. Thanks for joining us. Jesse, question for you. You watching much television these days?
I do, but I don't like where this question's going.
What, you read the notes or something?
I might have read the script ahead of time.
Jesse, exciting news. There's a new TV series out there, Unsolved, with James Patterson. Your guy. It's a 3-part series hosted by the best-selling author in America, examining unsolved homicide cases, because, that hasn't been done before. And here's what I particularly liked. This murder mommy-sounding show is going to be on the new subscription streaming service, Fox Nation. Here's the quote. For decades, Patterson has captivated the country with his best-selling titles, and we are thrilled to bring the incredible talents in storytelling and suspense to Fox Nation. So I assume, Jesse, given your passion for James Patterson, that you will get a subscription to Fox Nation just for this, or to find out about unsolved mysteries. I don't know. What's your plan at this point?
All right. For the people watching on YouTube, I want you to look at me. I'm looking at you. Absolutely not.
Do we need to go into do I remember correctly, your problem with James Patterson started on the cruise boat last year when we did the podcast?
Yeah. I was tired of him publishing books that he wasn't writing. And I'm like, this is not fair.
And now a year later, we're about to go on the cruise again, and I'm still hassling you about it.
Yes, but listen, it's our running joke, and eventually he'll have to respond. Eventually someone will pick this up and ask him about it, and then that will be our moment.
And why is he getting unsolved? I write mystery novels. I've solved all kinds of fictional homicides. Why is he getting this show?
Yeah, well, because he's not busy writing books.
I'd be happy to do that for him, too. Whatever. Yeah. All right. Our interview today is with Chaz Ebert, a businesswoman and now author. She is the CEO of Roger Ebert Digital, named for her late husband, the Pulitzer Prize-winning film critic. Together, they established the Ebert Fest Film Festival and the Robert Ebert Center for Film Studies at the University of Illinois. And now she has a new book. Listen carefully to the title. It's time to give a FECK. That's FECK, elevating humanity through forgiveness, empathy, compassion, and kindness. We'll talk to her about that and so much more. But first, the news. All right, first news story for the day. This just broke 48 hours ago as we record this. Meta, that's what we now call the company formerly known as Facebook, Meta considered buying Simon & Schuster. Some of you who have been listening to this for a while, or you're just familiar with the book world, will know that Simon & Schuster was on the auction block for a long time. For a while, Penguin Random House was going to buy it, and then the Department of Justice said no to that. And now it has actually been bought by a private equity fund. But, obviously, it's those equity funds that are the biggest supporters of the arts. Not. But somewhere in between there, apparently Facebook was thinking about buying the publishing house. Wait for it. Not because of their passion for publishing books, but to train the company's artificial intelligence tools, in other words, for AI scraping. This comes from records of internal meetings, which were shared with the New York Times, taking place in March and April of 2023, discussing how they could get hold of more data to train AI models. Here's the deal. If they bought the company, they wanted to set the price not according to what it's worth as a publishing company, but at least some people were debating paying $10 per book for the licensing rights, meaning the scraping rights, AI, to new titles. And this is from Simon & Schuster, which, just to remind you, is still one of the 5 biggest major, supposedly New York publishing houses in the English-speaking world. Jesse, now you know a lot about tech. This could indicate something about the future of publishing, or maybe about the future of AI and books. What are you taking away from this?
Like, this is one of those things where if this is allowed, that means you can't buy the rights to someone's piece of art to then use it to replace something that's going to then make art, right? That's not
it. Without paying somebody a licensing fee.
Yeah, like if they want to pay $10 a book,
yeah,
then they must also allow libraries to buy more than one copy of authors' ebooks at $10 instead of like $1,000 or whatever they charge. No, this is a terrible idea, and they should not allow this.
Well, you know what? At least what I think is going to end up happening, they're going to end up paying $10 a book for the books they want. They're just not going to buy the publishing company. They're going to buy the rights from this private equity fund or whoever ends up. These New York publishers are basically floating on backlist. That is books they published in the past, not the present. And then stuff like this, these are just looking like typical corporate takeovers where people buy a big company and sell off the good assets and cannibalize the thing.
Yeah. Listen, why don't they just buy all of the rights to James Patterson's books and run those through their scraping thing, and then we'll be fine.
They'd have to switch publishing houses, but I think you got the solution, actually. All right, news story number 2. This has to do with a new app called Storiaverse. If you're on YouTube watching this, Jesse just put up a graphic that spells that out, but it's about what you'd think, Storiaverse. It's an app. And really interesting. I looked at that this afternoon, but they're providing basically kind of animated stories. There's text, but there's also limited animation. And they are looking for writers to write essentially short stories for this app, although I think they're hoping to build toward multi-parters and stories of bigger scoop. But right now, and I'm quoting right from their website, unique, climactic, you'd think all stories are climactic, but whatever. Unique, climactic, and visually stunning original stories from the best writers and animators. The versatility and artistry in our stories means we have something for everyone, whether you're a reader or a watcher. Okay, Jesse, I was aware that you would be here when I chose this story. I think you watch more anime. I'm not saying I don't, but I think you know more about manga and anime, and maybe even short stories, who knows, than I do. I'm catering to your tastes, because most of these stories, though not all, most are science fiction and fantasy, but not all. There were some thrillers and even romances and other kinds of stuff. So have you looked at this, Jesse?
I haven't looked at this, but when you sent this to me to put it on the slideshow, I'm fascinated by it, because this sort of builds off an idea I had a long time ago that was going to match books with pieces of music to listen to while you're reading it, just because, to make something more immersive, right?
Right. Soundtrack.
Yeah, soundtrack. Some people see better than they read, and so anything that makes reading more engaging for those people, I'm 100% on board for. I'm very excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, it's off to a fun start. Now, here's what I couldn't find out from their website, or even after I emailed them, which is, okay, they're looking for writers. What are they paying writers? Which I think it's been established on this podcast that I think writers are entitled to be paid for their work. And what the rate is, I don't know. But particularly for somebody who, likes genre fiction, good storytelling, this might be something to look at in the future.
I'm excited for this, unlike our last story.
Right. All right, Jesse, cue up the music. I am very anxious. Let's talk to Chaz Ebert. Chaz, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Bill. Or actually, is it William? I'm going to call you. Is it William or Bill? I'm going
Bill
to
is
ask
fine.
you.
For
Bill,
you.
thank you. Thank you, Bill. Okay.
All right. We have a traditional first question on this podcast. If you could offer writers one piece of advice, what would it be?
If I could offer writers one piece of advice, it would be to write. Just write. Don't try to edit before you finish. Just write. write consistently, write every day, write even if you don't feel like writing. It's good to have a consistent routine, but I have to admit I didn't always have a consistent routine. I used to, some of the things that I actually learned about the discipline of writing, I learned from my late husband, Roger Ebert, because he was a fast writer, and he wrote both longhand and on a typewriter, but on a typewriter, and I'm saying typewriter, not computer, because it really was a typewriter. And he would do this one finger typing, peck, 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 but really quickly. And he said, the consistency was it for him. For me, I've learned that you think that there are going to be thoughts that you're going to remember, and that's not true. Sometimes you have a thought, and if you don't write it down at that moment, you may not be able to recapture it, and it could be something that's very profound. And so you have to.
I totally agree. I hear sometimes people say, no, I wouldn't write it down because if it were meant to go in my book, then I'll remember it.
Exactly.
And I think, well, I won't because I forget everything.
Me too.
I don't want to lose a great idea just because I was napping. But you have clearly done some writing, and you've got this new book from Simon & Schuster called, and I have to be careful now with my diction. Yeah, there it is. It's Time to Give a FECK.
FECK.
Tell us about this.
FECK. Yes. And the subtitle of the book is Elevating Humanity Through Forgiveness, Empathy, Compassion, and Kindness. And that is, a FECK is an acronym for those 4 principles.
Right.
It's time to give a FECK. And it was, it's being distributed through Simon & Schuster's Forefront Publications. And I only hesitate because in the beginning, we went around a little bit like, is this title too much in your face?
Right.
And I thought, well, I don't know. I don't think so. These FECK is something that I put together for forgiveness, empathy, compassion, and kindness. And so when I say it and when I think about it, I don't think anything wrong, except I will tell you what happened recently to me, Bill.
Okay.
I was at a dinner with a Catholic priest, and it was a dinner party with some friends, and we were all sitting around the table, and they were saying, oh, Chaz just wrote a book. And the Catholic priest said, what's the name of your book? And everybody got really quiet, and they looked to me to say it, and I got quiet. I said, it's time to give a FECK. And I don't know why I had to emphasize FECK. And then I was saying, well, it's really about forgiveness. It's about encouraging more empathy and kindness and forgiveness in the world. And I have to admit, the Catholic priest for a second did, he reacted a little bit. But then when we talked about what it meant, he said, oh, that's actually great thing to do.
You should just start saying the title is It's Time to Give Forgiveness, Empathy, and forget about the acronym.
Yes. But but I have to tell you the other thing we did. These days, people like to do surveys. So I think we surveyed about 200 people on the title. Should we change it to bringing more love into the world? Or, there were 5 or 6 different titles. And the overwhelming majority of people surveyed said, do not lose that title. That is the best title. It's time to give a FECK, elevating humanity through.
Now, here's my question. You don't have to answer if you don't want to.
Okay.
But did you come up with that title, or did somebody at the publishing house? Or maybe somebody else? I don't know.
No. I came up.
That was yours from the get-go.
It was my title. It's time to give a FECK.
You just had to sell
because of the FECK principles. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I asked because
Mhm.
for many years I was with Random House across the street, literally
Yes.
from Simon and Schuster, and they were constantly changing my title. Sometimes I
Oh.
didn't even know what their titles really meant, but they were just kind of spooky adjective and spooky noun for
Mm,
a thriller. And I thought,
yeah.
okay, you guys are the experts. But I agree with your friends who said that this book
Mhm.
title is just perfect.
Yeah, thank you. But
So,
you've written so many books. I can see if they
uh,
say, I mean, for me, this is the first, I've written my entire life. This is the first time I'm published a book because most of my writing I would write just for myself, not
mhm,
to be published. And uh, so it was important to me to have,
yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I've had the pleasure of reading it, and you did a great job.
Thank
What
you.
were you hoping to accomplish? What was your goal here?
My goal is really simple. My goal really was to just encourage more kindness in the world, to have, to allow us to forgive other people so that we don't feel a victim and so that we say that perhaps somebody was doing the best they could under circumstances. Because if we forgive people, we can maybe develop empathy for them. We can put ourselves into their shoes
Hmm.
and say, well, see what it's like to be a person of a different age or race or socioeconomic circumstance. Maybe that will want us to help alleviate the suffering of another, to have more compassion for someone, to do
Right.
acts of kindness. And so really it's so simple. It really is. Those four FECK principles are so simple because I do think that that is something that we need to do in order to, okay, this is the part that I need to learn to talk about better, Bill.
Okay, we'll work it out. Go ahead.
Okay, okay. At the bottom, it's all about love. It really is. It's really about love. I do think in the dedication to the book, I say I dedicate it to Roger, whose capacity for empathy knew no bounds, and to the universal source of love that binds us all together. And
Mhm.
I have to tell you, I don't know where that dedication came from. Roger, I knew. And then the universal source of love that binds us all together is something that I really feel is the over, really, that's the umbrella of
Mhm.
everything. That if we respect each other, if we are more compassionate and have more empathy for each other, that things will get better.
Mhm. Yes.
And yeah,
Well,
so
there's a lot going on in the world right now that needs to be fixed.
yeah.
And as I read this, I felt like she's giving us a blueprint here. This is
Mm.
the
Yeah.
blueprint. People talk about making the world a better place, but
Mhm.
this is how it would actually happen. What do you what did this is kind of in the book, but I'll ask, what advice do you have for people who might have the desire or potential to be game changers, to be future leaders?
At the end of each chapter, I actually have some exercises
Mm,
that for and you know what, which was a different. This is different than what I actually envisioned in writing this book. Um, and that's something that the publisher said, why not have something at the end of each chapter? And so I actually do have exercises, some of them that I actually had to do myself uh, in order to get better in,
mhm,
especially in forgiveness. Forgiveness to me is one of the most difficult things to do. And in the chapter on forgiveness, so this is another thing that's hard for me. You're my first really big, long interview. I've
yeah.
had some shorter ones, and so I have to learn how not to be so emotional when I'm talking about this. But in the chapter on forgiveness makes me weep. It
Yeah.
makes me
Well, it's
weep
powerful.
when
That's why.
I think about those women who were in that church in South Carolina, who, you know, the white supremacists
Right.
walked into a church and shot those people. And the women, the wives of some of the people who were killed, s- found it in their hearts to forgive the shooter.
Right.
I talk about the nickel mine Amish community where the man had gone in and shot these kids in a school before that night was over. The parents of the kids who were shot, some of the kids were still on the floor, and they went to the house of the wife
Mhm.
and told her that they forgave her husband. How is that possible? This affected me so deeply that even all these years later, I still, for the nickel mine, it's years later, the South Carolina was really not that many years ago.
Right.
But still, when I talk about those, I have to learn how to talk about them without getting so emotional.
I don't think anybody is bothered by you getting emotional, so don't worry about it. These are emotional subjects.
And so forgiveness is one that I think the thing that
It's the starting place, really.
starting place.
Yeah, that's why it's the F, right? It comes
Yeah.
first.
Archbishop Desmond Tutu told me, I visited with him in South Africa, and then we brought him to America where we gave him where we gave him the Abraham Lincoln Award.
Hmm.
And when we were sitting in the vault where he was handling Abraham Lincoln's letters, and he was talking about how when he and Nelson Mandela were putting together the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, and they had to set forth a path for redemption for the people under the old apartheid system who had been some of their jailers or some of their, some of the people who just had done some horrible things. And he said he lost so many friends. He said, and I said, how could you, how was that possible to do without bloodshed? He said, you have to forgive, because if you don't forgive, you remain a prisoner. And I thought about forgiveness differently after that. And he's right, and the others all say the same thing, that you forgive as much for yourself as you do for the other person. And I had never thought of forgiveness like that before. It's so, and it's not just a biblical precept. It's not just, it's a real thing, and it lifts that weight off your shoulders, and it allows light to come in, and it allows you to be able to find the humanity in yourself and in other people again. It is so, that one, I'm sorry to go on and on about it,
Don't.
but that one, I will. Now I know, never start talking about forgiveness first.
But it's the F in FECK, so you almost have to.
But people love talking about, compassion, kindness. Those are maybe a little easier to talk about, and empathy.
Right. Well,
Which is also difficult, putting yourself in the shoes of another. That's
I was
really
about
difficult.
to say that may be the hardest of them all, of the four, I think, and the one I see the least of sometimes in the world.
Yeah.
Your book is full of heartwarming stories, some involving famous people like Desmond Tutu or Colin Kaepernick, and some just regular people with some wonderful stories. Now, you just told us one. Do you have another favorite story in the book?
I do.
Should we talk about
I'm only
for a
telling you
minute or something?
No.
Just so you can have a break.
Okay. I'm going to be interviewing someone next week. Because I want to get some of these people that I talk about, I want to get them on video. And I wish there was a way that these Zoom things, I want to be able to look at you. I know I should look in the camera.
Yes.
So it looks
Isn't
like
that
I'm
hard?
looking at, it's so hard.
Yes.
Okay. But I want to look at you while I'm talking to you. And I guess I'm an empath. So I want to look at you when I'm talking to you, but I should look at the camera.
Right.
I'm glad that it's more of a podcast than a visual, but I'm a very visual person too. So I actually went and watched your podcast on YouTube because I like to see the people talking as they're going back and forth. All right, let me get back to the story. One of the stories that I love is Candace Payne. She
Mhm.
is a woman in Chicago who, and I think it was in 2019, we had a polar vortex. Now, have you noticed, Bill, that each year meteorologists come up with terms we've never heard before? I had never heard of a polar vortex, in 50 years. And then all of a sudden, it's not just cold, it's not just frost, it's a polar vortex. But we had a polar vortex in Chicago, and the temperature dropped to below like 30 degrees below, or some really, really, really chilling temperature. And so Candace was a small business owner, and on her way to work, she went outside. She saw how cold it was. She went back in and called all of her workers and said, "Do not come in. Do not try to go outside. It's too cold. Frost is freezing in the air. You won't be able to. There's too much snow. There's too much ice. It's just." So then she thought, "Oh my God, there are people who have no homes, who are living on the street. What are they going to do during this polar vortex?" And so she decided to go and save some homeless people. So she knew where there was a shelter. She knew where there was a bridge where some people were sleeping under, it was called like kind of a tent city. And she said, those people in tent city are not going to survive this day, or if it's a week. And so she went and started gathering up people, and then there were too many. And so she had a van. She was going to put them in her van, and she realized, where am I going to take them? So she started calling hotels and saying, I have a credit card and I will pay for these people, but they are homeless, and they, and and the big chains said no. But they said, no, we just have a rule. You have to have your own ID, and you have to have your own credit card. Now, I don't know if that's always the rule or not, or if that was a polite way to say, no,
Yeah.
don't don't gather up a lot of homeless people and bring them here. But so she thought, oh my God, I've got to do something. So she started calling hotel after hotel. Finally, she found a hotel owner who said, yes, it's okay, bring them here. And it may be the opportunity, because the weather was so bad that people were canceling at this particular hotel. And so it turned it into an opportunity.
Mhm.
So she thought, okay, her credit card, how many people can I save? And so then she put out a call on social media. Please help me. I need somebody to help me get a van to transport these people. Can you help me? And people started helping. Not only that, people started saying, I'll help you pay for them. How many people can we gather? I will help you bring food. They're going to need food to eat. They're going to need clothes to wear. And before it was all over, she was able to help. She thought it was going to be like 5 people. She was able to help like 125 people. And this hotel
Wow.
took them in. Some of it is things that we don't think about.
Sure.
So some of the people said, okay, I'm in a hotel. I can take a shower. I hadn't had a bath or a shower, but I don't want to put on those same dirty clothes. So she had to go to Kmart and buy clothes. And
Wow.
Kmart did donate some clothes. I mean,
Oh.
everything about this story I love.
Mhm.
And so I thought, okay, the story itself is fascinating enough. And then I started interviewing by phone Candace Payne. And she told me some things about herself as a kid. I said, where did you find that? Where did you, yes, we all want to help people, but where does that deep-seated need that you have come from? And she said, when I was a kid, my mom and my dad were heroin addicts. Me and my brother had sometimes no food, no gas, no light. Her brother didn't want to go to school wearing the same clothes they had to pass around. There were so many things, and she said, that's not a way I wanted to live. And I know no one wants to live like that. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. That's
So I have to tell you,
mhm.
this book, sometimes I wonder why I even wrote it, because it's hard to talk about. Some parts are really joyous to talk about.
Yes, I agree.
But the thing that gets me is that people have this capacity. I believe, in graduate school, I took philosophy, Western philosophy. And, some of my classmates used to make fun of me because I was more like, in the Rousseau camp, that man in the state of nature is good. That's what I always thought. That's what my mom would say. People are good if you give them the opportunity to be good, they'll be good. And people say, no, like maybe Hobbes or, Locke would say, no, given a choice and without rule, man would be in chaos. No one would look out for themselves. I mean, for other people, they look out just for themselves. I don't believe that. I do think that there's something about us. I do think that there's something about us in our DNA that's, I do know about, survival of the fittest and all that kind of stuff. But I do think that there's something, a goodness in people that sometimes that just needs to be unlocked. Okay, I don't know.
Wonderful book with a lot of heart in it, obviously. Which
I'm sorry. Let me.
stop already. It's wonderful. And let me tell you, for people who are listening to this and maybe getting a little choked up too, you need to read the book because it's this times 5,000. Really powerful. And I could relate to it. Here we're on the WriterCon podcast. We do the
Yeah,
WriterCon cruise, and the WriterCon's at least in part about supporting the next generation of writers.
Mhm.
But I know you have also done a lot of nurturing and work to generate the next generation of film critics and writers and
Yes.
filmmakers through the Roger Ebert Fellowship and other programs. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I can, and I love it because I call them my ambassadors of compassion. The students who have come through the program, they're usually either at universities. At the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, we have a year-round program of fellowships. Some of the others were started at film festivals. Robert Redford at the Sundance Film Festival started an Ebert Fellowship the year after my husband passed away. And the one at the University of Illinois, like I say, is a year-round program. I started one in Hawaii at their Hawaii Film Festival. It's not a year-round program, and it's just kind of occasional. We've done it at Telluride Film Festival and in Chicago at the Chicago Film Festival. But what I do, I try to encourage emerging writers and technologists as well. People say, why do you think about technologists? I said, because I think, first of all, because our society is run so much on technology these days, and it's going to be run more on technology than less. And there are
Clearly.
some technologists who really like to think about for instance, there's an engineering student named Jason Yu, and Jason Yu said that he's going to put together an app that encourages kindness and compassion. I haven't seen it yet. I would love to see that and see, how do you do that? How do you do that? What do you do? What buttons do you push to
Little hearts
program
float down the
empathy?
screen
Yeah,
if you do something nice.
like I think like the Wizard of Oz, and he's going to put something together, and it's going to make you a kind person or make you forgive. But
Right.
these students are amazing to me, and some of them have gone on to graduate. And I asked, I said, did any of these 4 principles make any difference to you? There's one student named, well, she's not a student anymore. She's graduated, but her name is Sue Ellen Chatunya, and she's from Zimbabwe. And she would whenever she would go back home, she would go around to people, and she lived in LA, and she would ask her friends, can you donate just some gently worn clothes, gently worn shoes that I can take home and donate to orphanages, or to, even to just, not necessarily just orphanages, to some people who may need them. And every time she went home, she would take this package to do things. And this is just, and she said, compassion and kindness were the easiest of the four principles for her. She said, to this day, the hardest one, forgiveness. She said, please, she said, I need to do that over and over again to remember how to forgive, or why forgiving is so important. So,
right. Yeah, I think I mentioned before, this is your first book. I know you've written things here and there.
yeah.
Well, you're a lawyer, so you must
Oh yeah,
have,
you know that.
not writing for publication.
Right.
How'd you get started? How'd you do it?
So there's a movie called Vicky Cristina Barcelona. And I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a great movie. It's a Woody Allen movie, and it has, I think Penelope. Oh my God, I'm forgetting the names of the people in the movie. Penelope Cruz, and the father is played by maybe not Anthony Quinn. Yeah, I think the father is played by
maybe?
Anthony Quinn, and because I think it takes place in Spain. But the father is this famous writer, and when his son says, "Dad, I hear Javier Bardem is the son." He says, "Dad, I hear that you just wrote this great book again." And he says, "Yes, this is a great book, and no one will ever read it." And he says, "Why?" He says, "Because they don't deserve to read my words." And so it's funny. I would laugh. Roger would tease me about that, because I've written my entire life. And he would say, "Why don't you publish some of that?" I said, "Because I'm not writing. I'm writing for me. I'm not writing for anyone else." And it's a really strange thing. It's not that of course, my writing is not too good for anybody to read, but it's just a strange thing that how you can write and still want it to be private. I don't understand. It's something that I don't understand. There's some psychological thing going on there that I don't understand. But so it was finally Roger who said, "You've got to publish a book. You've got to publish." He said, "You've written so much stuff. You've got to take some of this and put it in a form to publish." And it was as he was sick, and as we were going through the period where he was, well, we knew that, he may not have very long to live. And he just started encouraging me to write and to write for publication. And now it's happening.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Chaz, this has just been a delight talking to you, and really very warm and moving. One last question before I let you go, though. Okay, you've got a book, you've got the foundation, you're doing about 16 other things. What are you working on next?
Okay. My next project it's like a rock opera, sort of like Jesus Christ Superstar, but it's about Mary. And it's about how the divine feminine consciousness comes into the world to help us in our times of trouble. Mother Mary comes to me speaking words of wisdom, let it be. That's what my project is about.
You're writing the book for the musical.
It is actually, yes. It's a whole production that I'm having.
It's all right. It just makes it all so much merrier.
Okay. Working on it. That's something that's
super exciting. Of course, I love musicals, so you've tripped my trigger. That's fantastic.
So I have to tell you this. It's when I always thought that I wasn't a creative person, but during the pandemic, I wrote a song that is that was performed by a 10-piece band. Before then, I wrote a play that was performed by the Victory Gardens Theater in Chicago. I've written, a lot of things. And then I discovered, hey, actually, I am creative. And now I'm working with professionals to help me bring this to life. But I hope to see it on Broadway one day. So.
Oh, me too, man. I'll be first in line.
Oh, I know I could. Yeah. I want to ask you one thing. Can I ask you
Sure.
one thing before you go?
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you two things. Number one, you have written so many books. What is a tip that you have for writers generally?
You already gave my usual tip at the top of this interview. Just
really?
sit down to write and don't start rewriting until you've got at least a draft down, because it's a waste of time.
Mhm.
And beyond that, I would just, the most important tip is perseverance, because this is the book will not be written overnight. And even if it were, you're not going to sell it overnight. So just understand that you're in this for the long haul, and try to be patient, work hard, be pushy, but be patient too.
And the second thing, I have to ask you this. So you must be really smart. I heard that you were like a winner on Jeopardy.
Is that the test? It used to be people interview me and say, and he actually created crosswords for the New York Times. I'm like, yeah, never mind that he's written 60 books. He did a crossword, and now it's the same thing. He won on Jeopardy. But that was pretty cool, I have to admit. That was a life. I literally remember watching Jeopardy at home with my mom when I was like 4.
Yes.
So to finally be on the show 50 years later, that was a treat.
Well, I'm going to go to one of your conferences one day. I bet that I would learn a lot and would just be surrounded by other people who love to write too. Thank you so much.
Exactly. Oh, thank you for joining us, and good luck with the book.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
It's time to give a feck.
Yes, exactly.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Just a few parting words. As we record this, Jesse and I are literally just about ready to drive down to that big cruise ship. But our next WriterCon event after that will be the WriterCon Retreat, which is July 17th through 21st. And I have big news about that. We have, for various reasons, moved the location, and that is now going to take place at the gorgeous, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this is a fabulous luxury resort. It's called Canebrake. It's about 45 minutes outside of Tulsa in Oklahoma. So it's not hard to get to no matter where you are. And it's just absolutely so fantastic. They have everything you'd want: the pool, the spa, they got hiking trails and fishing and golf and all that stuff you would normally like. Plus, of course, we're going to be there, breaking people down into small groups for at least part of the day. What's unique about the retreat is that we get the opportunity, because the groups are smaller, that we can actually read your work. And at some point, other people in your group can read the work. So you get actual feedback, not general talk about books, but feedback on your manuscript, which can sometimes be enlightening, sometimes painful, but it is always beneficial. No writer is an island, and you not only need that to improve your work, but what I find year after year is people end up sticking together. Those retreat groups, and they become future beta readers and critique groups, and friends that they carry on throughout their life. So think about the WriterCon retreat, especially now that we've secured this wonderful location. You can learn more about it at our website, which of course is writercon.com, and then click on retreat at the top toolbar. One last plug. I got to mention my new book coming out. I think I said last time, the last one was Partners in Crime. That was Daniel Pike 7. And the next one, Daniel Pike 8, will come out in late May, and that's going to be called Justice for All. This time, Daniel Pike teams up with my lead series character from the Splitsville series, Kinsey Rivera. So now we've got 2 courtroom titans for a knockdown, drag-out courtroom battle like none you have ever seen before. I'll tell you more about the plot later. and when you can pre-order it, but Jesse's already got it up on the screen. There is Justice for All. You can see, this is cover reveal week. You can see it right there in the 8th slot. I think it looks good with the others, don't you, Jesse?
I like it. It fits. They all are of a piece.
Yes, well, that's really cool. And there's a lot of other cool stuff about this book too, like, Jesse, wait for it, original comic book art.
Ooh.
But I'll tell you more about that next time, all right? Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And remember, until next time, keep writing. And remember, you cannot fail if you refuse to quit. See you next time.